We are live from the Widecast Studios in downtown Peoria for another edition of Scott Wheeler's Airplay, where we go behind the scenes to talk to radio and TV personalities, past and present, that you have listened and watched, and find out what's going on in their lives, kind of behind the scenes. We are live now on Peoria Life's Facebook page and YouTube channel. And we're also going to post this to the Peoria TV i3 broadband channel 17, and it'll be all over Facebook, trust me. Also, Apple Podcasts is a way you can listen to Airplay when you're on the go. Today, I often get this question: where and whatever happened to Dan Dermody? Well, we're going to find out, because I found him. He was roaming the streets outside the studios, and I said, come on in here and let's talk to you and find out what's going on. Years and years in country radio, especially at WXCL, and Dan is here on Airplay today. Welcome.
Good to see you, Scott.
It is good to see you again.
Yep.
So, what have you been doing since your exit from radio? That's what everyone wants to know. I think most people assumed you went off to be a snowbird in Arizona or Florida or something like that.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Actually, I'm Mr. Mom.
Are you?
Yeah. My wife is still working, so I'm doing a lot of things around the house and stuff like that. But I did do a couple of part-time jobs in the last few years. I helped launch Prec-Shot Pharmacy out in Junction City, and I worked for a couple of years for Wright and Salmon Funeral Home. Mm-hmm. But right now, I'm not really doing much of anything. If there's anybody out there who has a part-time gig available, I'm ready.
So where did this all begin for you? I know you were in the service, so I wonder if you were part of Armed Forces Radio or anything like that when you started.
It all started, I tell you, the only thing I ever wanted to do in my entire life was be in the radio business.
I hear you.
From the time I was 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I was one of these guys who on Saturday afternoons would sit at home with my typewriter when the top 30s being counting down. I had loose leaf binders full of pages, you know. I could tell you what label they were on, what color it was, who wrote the song. You know, I was just one of those guys. Mm-hmm. And I started hanging around a little radio station in Centralia, Illinois.
Okay.
And which was about 20 miles from where I grew up. And the guy who owned the station was very nice, let me do that, just come in, hang around. And after I graduated from high school, I said to him, you know, I have this idea. How about if I go to all the high schools in the area, send them forms to fill out about what they're doing, what's going on at the schools, and I come in on a Saturday afternoon and I do an hour or two of music and talk about what's happening at all the schools. He said, that sounds like a great idea, but I'm not going to pay you anything. So for 2 years, I literally drove back and forth, and I did that. And I joined the service, and after basic training, was sent to Okinawa, where Armed Forces Radio had a beautiful setup. It was gorgeous. And so I worked there for a while, off duty, got permission from the officer for the time I was over there. And when I found out I was coming back to the States a year and a half later, I was going to North Carolina to Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in Goldsboro, and I looked up and found the radio stations there, wrote one of the general manager, one of the owners, say, I'm going to be stationed there. If you have any openings, I'd love to talk to you. He wrote me a very nice letter back and said, we'd love to talk to you when you get here. And I ended up working like 50 hours a week part-time, off duty there. And in 1968, we got married and moved to Raleigh. I landed a station there, a top 40 station. And from there to Florida, and from Florida to Peoria.
Okay. So I think most people obviously associate you with country, but it sounds like you did, well, you mentioned top 40, so
yeah.
It hasn't been exclusively country.
No, I'd say out of the close to 49 years I was in the business, I'd say 25 of those years was probably in country.
Okay.
But most of it was in top 40, and I did a 7-year stint in Vero Beach, Florida, for a beautiful music station as a sales manager and whatever. So, yeah, I've pretty much done it all. So I haven't done some of the formats, but I haven't done talk.
You're doing it now.
Yeah, I'm doing it.
So what got you to Peoria? Obviously a job opening, and tell me about that experience.
Well, I had worked in North Carolina and Florida with Bob Kelly. and his family and our family got to be real good friends, and so he ended up buying stations in Missouri and some other places, and would always call and say, "Hey, you guys want to come up?" And no, we're not leaving South Florida. We're 5 minutes from the ocean in Vero Beach, and we're enjoying the lifestyle. But when he moved up here to Peoria and bought WXCL, and what the time was Q105, we decided, yeah, we'll come, because my wife and I grew up in small towns about 30 miles east of St. Louis. And my wife had lost her dad a couple of years prior to that. My folks and her mother were getting up in years and not in the best of health. So it was time to make that full circle move back to the central Illinois area, where it was closer.
So when you got to WXCL, that was just on the AM side at
Right.
the time. What year would have that been?
86.
86,
Yeah.
okay. And then Q105, which was WKQA, was kind of a adult contemporary,
Right.
top 40-ish kind of thing. And eventually WXCL AM would also end up on the FM signal.
Exactly.
And you went right along with it.
Yeah, I went right over to the FM side, yeah.
So tell me about the legendary years of you and folks like Kimber Bennett at WXCL.
I tell you, we had more fun than is allowed by law, like they say. And over the course of the years, I was very fortunate. We were doing mornings, and I had some great help, some great co-hosts and whatever. But man, when Kimber came along, it really clicked. You talk a lot on your program here, I know, about chemistry. And we had that.
Yep.
We got to the point where we could finish each other's sentences. We knew what the other person was going to say. We just played off each other very well. But yeah, that was a fun ride.
And that was, I'm guessing, kind of early 90s-ish?
Early 90s, yeah.
And that is when that big wave
Exactly.
of what was then called New Country.
Yeah, Clint Black, Alan Jackson, Garth Brooks, the whole 9 yards there. I got a funny story I got to tell you.
Okay.
We mentioned Garth Brooks. When we first moved over, we were going to have a listener appreciation concert. We were going to charge, I don't know, $10.49 because it was on 104.9 for tickets and whatever. And so we were trying to get an artist to come in and play with us. Well, Garth had just had his first hit. And so the record company says, "Hey, we'll give you Garth. He'll come in and play." And so we all sat around and we said, "Garth Brooks? Nobody knows who he is yet. Nobody's going to come to this show." So we decided to go with a guy named Ronnie McDowell, who was really hot back then. He had, a dozen #1 songs and whatever. And so my story is all the time, I turned down a free show from Garth Brooks. I'll never live that down.
No, you won't.
And
it's all about timing, man.
I haven't had the opportunity to tell him about that. I did meet Garth, but never had the opportunity to tell him the story about that.
My guess is he wouldn't do a free show now, or maybe he's made so much money he would.
I don't know.
So I've been looking forward to talking to you for a number of reasons, but your perspective more than anything on what we just alluded to, country music's evolution. Here's what I think happens, and it's kind of the same thing in rock and roll. So you have this wave, and you go back as far as you want to, and then it evolves with a new set of artists. And everyone who liked the original set of artists thinks, this is not country.
Exactly.
Forget about it. I'm not listening. I can't handle it. Then that group gets established, and another wave comes along, and the same thing happens. Right. I'm not listening to that new stuff anymore. Give me Garth Brooks and Alan Jackson. Then it happens again and then again. Have you gotten to the point where you have fallen over to the dark side and said, this new wave of country music, the Keith Urban's, he's not really new, but the
Florida Georgia line,
Florida Georgia line, where you're saying in your head, I'm sorry, But that's not country music. You're holding on to Garth and Roddy McDowell.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
But if you had a chance to watch the Ken Burns country special,
Yes.
which I thought was
Awesome.
phenomenal,
Awesome.
you got a chance to see how things are constantly changing.
Yes.
You know, nothing stays the same. Everything evolves. And what we considered rock and roll when I was growing up in the 60s and 50s certainly isn't what they consider rock and roll today. So everything just changes.
Yeah.
It just goes along.
So, but be honest. You listen to Florida Georgia Line and you wince?
No.
So you do wince.
Everybody says, do you listen to country? Nope. Not anymore. No, I can't say not anymore, but not very often.
You know, I have the same issue with contemporary music, so
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. Well, what you played on KZ 93 years ago certainly isn't around, you know, that's not on oldie stations.
No,
It's now on WIRL.
No, sure isn't. So, what's the craziest thing you ever had to do in radio, or the most? You know, I know we're going to get to some memorable things, but I just did you ever have to like broadcast from a cow or anything
No,
like
but
that?
I had to broadcast from my underwear up on top of Jim McComb Chevrolet years ago.
That you didn't
Yeah.
really have to bring that up, Dan.
I made sure I had like 4 pair on.
What was the occasion that caused you to do that?
They just were, you know, we've stripped our prices down or something like that. But, yeah, I think everybody in the radio business has done something crazy at some point in their life. But yeah, that was. I mean, there were other crazy things too, but that was pretty nuts.
Yeah, I'll say, yeah, that might take the cake. So we're talking about your interaction with country artists over the years, and especially when they're new in their career, a la
Right.
Garth, and then have turned into superstars. In fact, in promoting the show, great picture you have with Taylor Swift.
Oh, God,
and I
I love
look
her.
at that picture and I think, man, who would have thought
That was
at that
probably,
point in time? And now she sells out stadiums.
well, that was. Over the course of your career, there are some things that really stand out, and that really stands out in my career. The way it happened was we had a St. Jude child named Lexi from Chillicothe. And I had gotten a hold, she was a huge Taylor Swift fan, and she was like 8 years old. And I got a hold of the management company, and I told him, this girl is going to be at the show. Is there any chance of meeting Taylor Swift? So we got a couple of backstage passes and tickets and stuff like that. And she was actually the opening act for Rascal Flatts.
Of course.
She was opening it. So anyway, make a long story short, we go to the meet and greet. This lady comes and says, have a seat over here in this room and somebody will be back in just a second. Unbeknownst to us, it was her mom. So Taylor's mom comes and gets us, takes us out into the arena, and we got these VIP seats. Taylor's performing, and she said, somebody will be here to get you in just a few minutes. Well, as she's doing her last 2 or 3 songs, these 2 ushers come, get us, carry us right up to the stage. They reach down and pick up Lexi, and she's up on stage singing with Taylor Swift.
Man.
So after she does a couple of songs with her, they take her off stage. We're back, and Taylor finishes her show. And all of a sudden we hear, hey, let's go. And she's in a golf cart. And she takes Lexi, her sister, who's a couple of years older, and her mom, and I. And we go on to Taylor's bus, and we're on there for like an hour. And she's showing these kids her jewelry, her awards. She gives them a stuffed animal. And I mean, the girl, it couldn't have been any nicer. I mean, she was just awesome. I'd love to meet her again sometime and just tell her what an incredible difference she made in this child's life. Unfortunately, Lexi passed away about 1.5 years after that.
Yeah, you helped her live a dream.
Yeah.
You made a wish, so to
Yeah,
speak.
it was a fun night.
We're talking with Dan Dermody here on Airplay today. Dan, of course, spent many years as the morning show host, along with others at WXCL, and a legend here in Peoria for sure. Kind of blazed the trail for country radio in Central Illinois. And you've been recognized for that. I know that I can't remember the organization that has honored you many times.
Yeah, the Illinois Country Music Association, which is kind of a misnomer. It's actually the middle third of the state.
Okay.
So, Yeah.
Well, that's well. What's the name of the award again? I forgot.
Well, DJ of the year,
Okay.
radio personality of the year, and they gave me a humanitarian award one year for the work with St. Jude and stuff.
Let's talk about that. So I assume, because I know country radio and St. Jude have been married for years, but with the St. Jude connection in here in Peoria, was it the radio platform that brought you into a relationship with St. Jude, or had you been doing stuff before
No,
that?
actually, there was a lady named Michelle, and her son, Austin, was about 2 years old and had cancer. And she called one day to the station and said, I've got an idea that I think you guys might be interested in. And so she came and she's telling us about this Country Cares for Kids Radiothon. And it was just getting started. It was all founded by Randy Owen from Alabama. And there were maybe 100 stations around the country that would participate in this every year, raising money for St. Jude. And so we got to talking about all that, and in the meantime, while we're talking, Austin's underneath the table untying our shoes and whatever. But my wife and I and the then director of St. Jude here in town went up to Chicago and watched them do their radiothon up there and said, we can do this. So we did our first ones out at Northwoods Mall, Center Court, and we started, and we did the first year, we did pretty well, and then it just got bigger after that. So she was the catalyst among the whole thing. And so it's been 27 years now that we've been involved with St. Jude in one way or another, my wife and I both.
What I think is unique about you, Dan, is in radio, we all have those kind of public service projects that we do, and it's kind of connected to our work. And when the work goes away, oftentimes that connection goes away. But with you, just from following you on Facebook and so forth and knowing you, you have kept up that relationship, and I assume with some of the patients that were little kids when you first got to know them and now are thriving adults.
A lot of them are married and have their own kids, which is great.
That's got to be
and,
so
But
rewarding.
of course, along the way, we did lose a few children, but it's really, I have what I call my charter kids. Because they were the ones that were on first back in the early 90s and mid 90s and whatever. And I still keep in touch with a lot of them, and I see them from time to time, and it's really cool to see them have their own families now.
So talk about what that organization then has meant to you. Why? I mean, the pull is obvious, kids who are
obvious,
sick, but it goes deeper for you, I think.
You know, it gets in your heart. You know, Scott, you've been involved in charitable work over the years, and you know, there's just something about St. Jude and the kids. It just gets in your heart, and you're just, you know, it just pulls you right in. You just can't help it. It means so much.
And obviously you've kept up with some of them. Does one? I think the Taylor Swift story is amazing. Is there another one like that a special kid? They're all special, but
they're all special. You know, I don't know. There's been so many of them, and it's very sad that there still are so many of them. But they're making great strides at St. Jude as far as the research and all that, and hopefully one day there won't be any more childhood cancer.
I just think it's a great marriage of the fact that you're here. Radiothons for St. Jude were fairly new.
I got to hand it to WXCL, though, or the Wolf. They're carrying on that radiothon tradition.
Yeah, I wonder, you know, starting with you up till today, what the total must be of money raised through those radiothons.
Well, I was involved in 13 years here, and we did well over $1 million in that 13-year period, and they've continued on. John and the gang over there have done a great job.
Yeah. So, how many grandkids are you up to now?
How many grandkids?
Yeah.
One.
One?
Yeah.
That's all you've managed to squeeze out?
That's it. As a matter of fact, he'll be 10 years old.
Wow.
Next week. My son and his wife and our grandson Quinn live out in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
So we're out there a couple of times a year. They may come here, but we talk to them a lot on Skype.
Yeah.
but they're very happy in Portland. They don't want to live anywhere else, so they love it out there. So yeah. It's funny. I went to a high school reunion recently, and people are talking about their 23 grandkids. And well, how many do you have? One.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah, and he's going to be like 10. Yeah, we were late coming to that table.
Yeah, but you have lots of family here. You have a brother, don't you? Is
I have
Tom
a
still
brother.
around?
Here, my niece Jessica, Dr. Higgs, is a sports doc at Bradley. Her husband's Dr. Craig Higgs is with OSF. For some reason, we were drawn to Peoria. I'm the oldest of 7 kids.
Wow.
And my brother Tom, who lives here, is editor of the Catholic Post newspaper. He's the youngest. So the bookends ended up in Peoria. I actually have 5 brothers and 1 sister.
Oh, my goodness. So, yeah. Well, Dan, it has been wonderful catching up. I told you this would go quickly. And Dan has so many stories that we're going to have to do part 2 for sure.
I'm
so
ready.
You're into the part 2 club.
I've heard that. Some of the other people you've talked to. Well, thank you, Scott. I tell you, this has really been fun, and I appreciate you having me here this morning.
Absolutely. It's been great to catch up. This has been another edition of Airplay here on Peoria Life's web portal, the Facebook page. Also, Peoria Life has a YouTube channel, and we go live there every week, but you can watch previous and future episodes at Peoria Life, YouTube, Peoria TV, that's channel 17 on the i3 broadband system, and of course all over Facebook. And if you're on the go, we encourage you to listen to it on Apple Podcasts. We'll have another great edition of this next Tuesday around 10 a.m. Until then, thanks for watching another edition of Airplay. Have a great day.
PeoriaLife.com